Because when you're on set and somebody comes to you, they're like, oh my God, we're off schedule by like 30 minutes and it's all gonna fall apart. And then you just can look at them after you've been like, I just ran up a mountain carrying a log on my back, being chased by wolves.
Where'd you grow up?
That's an interesting question because I don't know if I have.
Yeah. How old are you right now?
I'm 28.
Okay. You're getting there. Yeah.
Yeah, it dawned on me this year. I was like, I have to do everything I've ever said I was going to do or else I'm going to evaporate into dust at 30.
Yeah. Do you feel 30 like kind of like an impending doom or something?
It's something like that. It's motivation.
Yeah.
If anything, I think what that marks for me is a 10-year mark of being invested in making things as like a career.
Right.
As like a passion, as like my life path. So that's what I'm excited about. It's like, how can I mark that as a moment that like shows me I've really done the work.
Right. Do you feel like you've surpassed anything, or you feel like you're still sort of about to hit those goals or anything?
So the reason it stresses me is because I feel like I haven't done anything.
Yeah. Where'd you think you were going to be? Maybe.
Exactly where I'm at.
Exactly.
So
what are you worried about?
You know, I just want to make sure I use the most of momentum, the most of what I've been given. I don't want to squander any kind of like opportunity or seeds of things that are there, you know?
Yeah.
You ever talk to your friends and you're like, oh, I'm going to do this thing. I'm going to do this thing. And they're like, okay. All right. And then when you actually do it, you're like, see, I told y'all.
Yeah.
I got it, you know?
Totally.
So hold myself accountable.
Did you know you always wanted to do this?
You know, looking back in hindsight, it's like, obviously, it's like when you're 6 years old and you're watching Alien on VHS on repeat. You're watching Aliens, you're watching Alien 3, you're like, interesting. I love these color palettes that are consistent. Let me draw pictures of like what I would see this world looking like. And, you know, wanting to create sounds and music and playing on like a little keyboard and creating all these like stories with action figures. It's like, all right, maybe this is something that combines all those things. But what I really love about filmmaking is it's like this holistic practice of everything that makes up who you are is now able to find a moment. It's like how you feel about how life is moving, pacing, how you feel about emotional connection, how you feel about language. Yeah,
I feel like the music analogy is such a good analogy to use for filmmaking because I played drums like most of my life, and I love the idea that like two drummers could play the same beat and it's two different things. You have to kind of find your voice in the same way that you have to find your voice for filmmaking. You know what I mean? Do you feel like you've sort of tapped into your voice? Like, do you think you see it clearly now, or is it still sort of evolving in some way?
Yeah, I think it's constantly evolving if we're living right, if we're allowing ourselves to be childlike, if we're allowing ourselves to not grow up, and we're constantly learning. So that's what I feel like I'm doing right now is I'm trying to learn as much as possible so that voice becomes clear.
What does that look like though? Like practically, like how do you find yourself learning?
Now we're getting deep. Now we're getting into some philosophy of life type stuff. I think some things that like really stand out to me in how I see my own life story and how I see the world is finding light within darkness. And I think we're surrounded by a lot of negative things that are constantly vying for our attention, which take us away from, you know, what we were brought here to do. So that's what I try to find within these visual motifs in my work is like a duality between, all right, something might feel eerie, might feel dark, it might feel not like an actual real thing. It might feel like we're in another world, but then it brings you to something that's more aligned with your heart.
I know, I totally feel what you're saying, where you feel like a lot of your technique and what you're interested in should come from you, like your personal sort of journey and stuff. But do you study in any other way? Like do you read? Do you like watch certain things to get you inspired or anything?
Yeah, when it comes to filmmaking in particular, I think what I'm most inspired by right now is my friends, which I think sometimes we're afraid to say because people are like, oh, no, you don't want to be like everybody else. You don't want to, fall into this thing where you're morphing. But they're my friends for a reason. Right. It's because we have these similar beliefs and views of the world. And I think seeing the stuff that they're doing is like being a part of a moment. It's about being a part of a movement. It's like being a part of a time. Because I look up to people that are much bigger filmmakers than me. Throughout the whole history of filmmaking, it's like these few groups of guys that all had these like crazy ideas and were like, oh, you're doing that? Well, I'm going to do this. You're doing that? Well, I'm going to do this. And that's what pushed like culture forward. So I don't know if we're on here naming names, but Leo Aguirre, for example, one of my best friends.
We're talking to Leo tomorrow. It's so funny.
Peace, Leo. You're the great. I don't know. I don't want to just like lift off names, but sure. Like that's somebody that I started making stuff with. Yeah. Like we came Texas, together. Right? Yeah. As young kids. Yeah. Like I mentioned, like it's almost 10 years into this. It's like that's someone I knew from the jump. So yeah.
I remember I met Leo in Austin, and then I met you in Austin as well. How long ago was that? It was on two separate occasions, but I think it was maybe 5 years ago, it feels like. Yeah. We were just doing some vodka commercial or something, and you were like, yo, I'm going to come. Jeez. And you just hung out, dude. It was so cool. Yeah. Do you do that a lot? Like, do you just you try to get on sets? Are you kind of jaded by it at all at this point? Like,
no, because it's fun. Yeah. I don't want to lose the fun of it, you know? And it's all kind of like ridiculous sometimes. Like, I'm like, this can't be real. We just show up and we're like, let's do that, move this thing here. So I try to keep the play aspect of it. I don't always want to have a stiff, sadder environment. So I like to invite my friends as well.
That's cool. Do you think my dad always used to tell me you are who your friends are? Yeah. Do you think that's true?
What is a friend? what does that mean?
Yeah. Or maybe you are who you surround yourself with, perhaps?
Yeah. I think that extends beyond just people. I think you definitely are what you surround yourself with. So
I like that you said it's beyond people. Yeah. It's like everything, What do you consume on a day-to-day basis? Is it like 6 hours of TikTok or something, or is it like 6 hours of something meaningful, whether it's like conversations or a podcast that's like giving you some kind of information or something?
Right now, I like to consume discomfort. I'm trying to find like the beauty in the ugly. Yeah. So can't find the beauty in the ugly if you're not really getting into it. Yeah. And something that I believe allows me to be like the best version of myself is being like physically active. So I like to train with like a boxing coach. Yeah. And I'm starting the day off immediately with like, okay, I got to be on high alert and ready for anything that comes my way.
You kind of piss me off sometimes too, because I see you doing like some modeling stuff every once in a while. Yeah. And I'm like, that's pretty unfair, bro. You know what I'm saying? But it's like, I just hate people who are like stacked in life. And I hope that you don't take this the wrong way, but like super talented filmmaker, but also can jump in front of the camera and just like look sick as well, But I know you work hard at that too. It's like I'm also not trying to be like ugly in your body, but you like work hard at like what you look like as well and like keep fit and whatever. And you can do both. And that kind of pisses me off.
Well,
I hope that doesn't come off aggressive. But.
Yeah, I think that's where it's coming from with me as well. It's like I don't want to look at my life and think that I'm not living up to like what I'm capable of.
Yeah.
So that's like what keeps me going. It's like I don't ever want to like slack off. I don't want to let go of anything.
Yeah.
So,
well, it's also like, I mean, probably just like the last month or so, I've started getting into just not like heavy shit, but just like lifting some weights, like putting my body. I've always kind of run pretty frequently, but there's such a difference from just like putting your body under like some pretty good stress.
You know why?
I mean, psychologically, you mean?
Yeah, because when you're on set and somebody comes to you, they're like, oh my God, Sister just doesn't have the right color shirt, and the whole thing is not, we're off schedule by like 30 minutes, and it's all gonna fall apart. And then you just can look at them after you've been like, I just ran up a mountain carrying a log on my back, being chased by wolves. And you're like, it's going to be okay.
We're gonna make it. Yeah.
You know, so you
100%.
gotta just like, you gotta put yourself through, I think, real challenges so you're able to be more present when you're on set.
So true, dude. What's the boxing been like? I mean, is that something, did you grow up watching boxing? Were you kind of fascinated with combat sports or anything?
A little bit. It was something that, you know, I think seemed scary.
Yeah.
And
are you sparring and stuff?
I'm getting there. It's close.
That's the only thing.
It's a conflict of interest because I was like, you talked about I'm trying to use my face.
Right.
I'm like, how much do I want? It doesn't really matter so much.
Yeah.
But yeah, sparring, that's been fun. And running from things that are holding me with fear. When I was younger, it was harder to believe that I could create things and make that my life.
Yeah.
You know, I was lucky to have some people who really encouraged me and pushed me and were like, hey man, like you can really do this. And I'm like, I don't see examples of that. So I don't really believe you. And now we're in a world where like, you can pick this up.
Right.
There's an example of it. You know, you can find a community a lot easier. So that's what I really have loved about Film Supply and Musicbed is I think what they've been able to do is like connect artists together. I talk about friends being like the building blocks of like inspiration and growth.
Yeah.
Yeah, like they've done that from the jump. So I love that.
Do you think can you look kind of 10 years down the road? Mm-hmm. You know, like you sort of look in blocks of time, like when you're 30, have you already sort of set, 30 to 40 as like, do you see some of those goals at this point, or is it, you're going to let it come?
If you don't have a plan, you plan to fail. Is that the same?
Something like that, yeah. I get what you're saying.
Yeah, absolutely. I have my ideas, but there's my plan and there's God's plan. Yeah. So who knows? But what I would really love to do is reach a point in like commercials, for example, to where I know I've made enough of a difference that there are people that can look at my work and not only know my voice, but be inspired by it that are younger than me.
Love that.
Just like I've been inspired to like get involved in this as well. And I don't think I've been able to like really leave that kind of mark yet.
Yeah.
And why I say that about commercials is just because that's everywhere. That's something that like is going to constantly be consumed. And it's like these like subliminal things that like get in your head.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's the best avenue for me to like get ideas out there and really immerse myself in like the industry of creativity.
What's your like treatment process right now? Do you have sort of a routine? I know it's always different based on the brief and whatever, but have you found yourself having some routines that you have around treatments?
Yeah, right now I'm trying to think of treatments as a way for me to get better at telling stories. So when I eventually move beyond just the commercial world and more into a longer form kind of world that I already have like a system and a way of thinking. So I work with some of the same writers. I work with some of the same designers, and I work with some of the same image pullers now. Whereas when I first started, it was like I'm pulling from all these different people every single time, like who's available. And now I'm like, I'm not doing this unless I'm doing it a specific way. And I started off making treatments for other directors. Yeah. So that gave me a lot of insight into like, all right, what wins, what feels good, design aesthetics.
Can you dive into that a little bit without giving away too much of the sauce? You know, what are some things that a younger filmmaker who maybe is starting out writing treatments or having to write treatments for something regional or even something national, like what's some of the things that they should pay attention to that you've gathered?
It depends what it's for. I would think about your audience first, like, who's consuming this and like what's the most important thing that I need to convey to them. Yeah. But I would always think back to like the fundamentals. I talk about like how older filmmakers of past generations were pushing each other as friends. It's like there are these things that are consistent over time. And the one thing that's consistent about filmmaking over time is like you have to write. Yeah. And I would always start there with like understanding what are you trying to say? Because before you even look at a picture, before you look at like a feeling, or there's this thing now, I call it vibe politics. Yeah. It's like things are more about just like a mood than they are like substance. So start with the writing, know what you're going to say. And then from there, you're able to have like a clear map of like, what are the images that we want to bring into this? And what do those images say about like how this story arcs? Like, are we starting bright? Are we starting dark and ending light? So having this cohesion of like colors, having a cohesion of textures. I think sometimes I see treatments that are a bit too vague. And, I think what I appreciate about a filmmaker is like making a decision to say a certain thing or be a certain way. So with the treatments, just stand on who you are. You know, it's like, no, this whole thing's going to be black and white, high contrast. Yeah. I'm not going to throw you like, all right, could be this, could be this, could be this. It's like, no, that's it,
Because there's always a point when you're writing a treatment that you're like, is this too much? Yeah. And I feel like that's the moment where you're like, you should probably double down on something, Like you said, like black and white, high contrast. You know what I mean? Like either they're going to love it or they're going to hate it. Yeah. And if they love it, then I get to do something that I want to do, But if you go in there and you're just compromising, you could probably get into a place where you're like, do I even want to make this anymore? Like this is vanilla, Sometimes I feel like I win a treatment and I have this moment right when I win it, then I'm like, I don't want to do this, because it's so much work to win that thing, Do you ever feel like that?
I feel like from that point forward, it's my job to make sure that everybody else around me is wanting to give their best.
Yeah. What are some of those things that you feel like get in the way sometimes?
We talked about fear earlier. Yeah. For example, if a client is afraid of a certain kind of shot that you're going to do because you didn't explain to them well enough the technicalities of it and how it might actually be something that's so simple, or you're not able to break it down into a language that they can understand, then that's on you, Right. So I've tried to distinguish between, all right, what's on me that I can control to help and what's beyond that. Because sometimes there are just things that also can change a project that you don't have control over.
So do you get into like on treatments, how deep do you get on like, we're going to use Steadicam versus techno, or like, we're going to like, do you go that deep?
I do on certain things that like require that kind of technicality. Right. It doesn't always, like, sometimes people are wanting to understand more about a story. So
right.
it goes back to like the audience. So if I have like a first call with somebody and we're already talking about like camera techniques, I'm like, all right, maybe you get this.
Yeah.
Versus someone asking me a question that might be less informed about like the process of actually creating and production.
Yeah. Sometimes I'll, especially on like a treatment call or something.
Yeah.
There's always one person that throws out something that I didn't think about, you know?
Yeah.
Do you have those moments where you're like, you got to be on your feet a little bit? Like, how do you react to sort of those moments sometimes?
I'm just honest. I think that's
say,
the best
I don't
thing.
know, or like,
yeah, I'm like, I have not thought about that because I think people can feel it when you're not being like true.
Or you're just BSing.
Yeah. And that is like going to create an environment of like distrust.
Yeah.
And that's what leads to the fear and the whole house of cards falling down.
Yeah. Do you know what kind of movies you'd want to make? Have you kind of thought that far?
I have.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting because, I talked earlier about the things that inspired me as a kid and how that now has like shaped like this path of becoming a filmmaker, creator, and artist. Because it hasn't changed. It hasn't gone anywhere. It hasn't gone away. And some of the things that inspired me most are what still inspire me today that I see being made. So I'd love to make like sci-fi epics.
No way.
Like big worlds.
What was like the movie that turned you onto that when you were coming up? Alien, obviously, but
Fifth Element.
I love that this is your genre. I would not have suspected that at all.
Really? Yeah, I would start there. It's like doesn't take itself too seriously. It's still super beautiful. It's still like super considered with like all the decisions. I used to watch that. Maybe Blade. Yeah, it's a fun one too. But both of those are like worlds that are like,
exactly.
Right, everyone wears leather for some reason. I don't know why. It's just it is that way. But yeah, what also really inspires me is these things that are in these bigger worlds, but like center back to these like very human kind of connections. Yeah. That's what I love about those kind of films. Yeah. Is it's considering this as like an art form and not as content. Yeah. And I think why it's important that we make things that are considered art first is because that's what moves the hearts of people. Like that's what creates change. And I think we can all agree that we want the world to be the best version of itself, right? I keep saying that over and over again. And it's like to do that, we have to make sure that we're creating that. We're inspiring people to want to do that. Because if we make things and we're complacent and we're cutting corners, I'm like, all right, we'll spoon feed people that everything's going to be okay without them stepping up to the plate. Without us showing a mirror of like, hey, here's society and here's the world right now. And it might not feel great, but here's something that you can do to change that. Or here's where we've come from and where we're going. That's why I like science fiction. Yeah. Because it allows you to create this world that you feel safe in. Because like, that's not real. What?
Yeah, sure.
Crazy. And then you put in like, some commentary of the moment or of your heart that is true, that's happening right now. Right. It needs to happen and like infiltrates. Yeah.
Do you feel like consistency is important? Even in commercial stuff too, like do you have, and you don't have to answer specifically if you don't want to, but do you have sort of a ratio of things that you show versus things that you don't show? Be honest.
I do more than just commercials. I do more than just filmmaking. Right. So I think there's a ratio of a lot of things that I do that aren't seen. Right. But when it comes to work in particular, I couldn't tell you, but the things that I do show, I know immediately when I start the project that I'm like,
this is a banger.
Yeah. There's always like a a moment where I'm like, oh yeah, like I don't actually even care about making money from this.
Right.
Because I think sometimes that can lead people astray. It's like, this just needs to happen.
Is there like a common denominator between those kind of projects that you've found?
Let's see. They're usually with groups of people that want to make something like no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
It's like when I'm working on things where it's like, okay, we just have to do this for whatever entity is,
right,
is throwing us into the fire right now. It's not so great. But what I really do love about these passion projects, they're not always passion projects, but passionate people involved in projects, is that carries out through the whole process.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, we're going to do pre-production right. We're going to figure out what we want to make right. We're going to get to know each other and understand how each other works so we can do this effectively.
Yeah.
And, oh, we shot it now. We did it. Well, it's not just like, all right.
Right.
It's like, let's keep that same energy through this whole thing, down to the last frame. And that's how you make something that's like truly worth it.
Yeah. Are director's cuts a big thing for you? Do you edit yourself?
I do. I try not to even have a computer around me too often.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because like I said, I'm trying to be more present and live life.
Yeah.
And I think my task as a director is to make sure I'm able to delegate and work with people. And people are here. Right. People aren't there. So that's one thing. But I do love edits, and I have like a very particular idea with editing. So I like to sit in with editors.
Can you analyze like your work and sort of identify maybe some turning points in your career, like after you've made certain work? Like, what are some of those pieces to you that you feel like things started to change after you made those things?
I try my best to just keep one foot in front of me, keep going forward, and not like get too caught up in any of these outside opinions.
Yeah.
But yeah, there was one project in particular, I think that was just like this moment in time where enough people were like paying attention to like that subject matter and like, you know, the kind of thing that it was trying to say, that it was like a magnifying glass on like my work. It's not really like everything I want to say or who I am.
Sure.
And it's also something that like I came together with somebody else to create.
Okay.
And help execute for them. So I think sometimes it's interesting that like we'll make things for ourselves that sometimes like, this is it.
Yeah.
This is the one. And the world is like, y'all hear something?
Yeah.
You know? But then there's other things where we're like, okay, like, I don't know. We'll see. Like, let's just roll the dice here. And then now suddenly that's like the thing people are looking at you at.
Yeah.
Yeah. It just became a piece where like people were asking me to recreate that all the time.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's frustrating. That's not my voice. Like, that's not all in me. That's like a part of me.
Was it people commercially trying to get you to recreate that? Like, is that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially that.
And you're sitting there kind of like, I kind of want to get away from that because I want to do these other things. Is that what you mean?
Right.
That can be frustrating.
Yeah. I think it's our job to direct our life, direct our presentation, you know? Yeah. So I've tried my best to be very specific with like what I share out of the work that I do. So it's not always like I'm doing all of this work and like it's not good and I don't want to share it because of that.
Dude, I totally feel you. Because I was doing so much doc work early on, and inevitably just start doing doc commercial work and like more like real people, like real. But I'm sitting there going like, I want to do like narrative. Like I want to write stuff. I want to like create scenes and like, you know what I mean? And it was very frustrating. And I got to a point where I was like, I'm going to stop taking doc work completely. If it's like doc oriented, I'm just not going to do it. But sometimes you got to do that, man. Yeah. And like create passion projects that represent where you want to be, you know? Are you doing passion projects a lot? Do you try to have things that you're mustering up at all times?
All the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's really necessary. And it makes me sad to see that sometimes we can lose that by getting so caught up in like this next carrot that's in front of us, right. You know? So yeah, that's what really like sustains me and allows me to like keep going and doing this. 'Cause like getting burnt out on being spread so thin isn't going to help that work. Yeah. And that's the work that like you're going to look back on at the end of your life and be like, okay, I left something here
right.
that mattered. And that's how I'm trying to think about all of this. So yeah, there are some things right now I'm working on that I'm really excited about. I don't know how much I can talk about on here.
Is there a passion project that you have done already that's out that you wouldn't want to talk about?
Sure. Yeah, I just put out something on my Instagram. Actually, I wasn't actually supposed to share it on Instagram. It was part of the thing that like it only shows.
You signed some NDA?
Maybe they'll see this. I'm sorry. But yeah, so it was this piece where it's like perfect storm. It's like, hey, we want you to choose something you're kind of interested in already.
Yep.
Do it however you want. Here's just enough money to make something cool, kind of, if you want. You know?
Perfect storm for sure.
Yeah, and I was like, okay, cool. Like work with whoever you want to work with. So at that moment, something that had really been inspiring me was like understanding like different levels of consciousness and understanding like what is reality, like what is all of this stuff that we're here interacting with. And I wanted to explore that deeper. So there's this form of therapy for people's skin where they introduce different wavelengths of light that can heal certain ailments or like, you know, change different composition. Yeah, and that sort of thing. So I was like, okay, how do we show this? Because this is connecting like, you know, one part of this big esoteric idea and like something that's like practical that you can actually go do. So yeah, I was able to create all these wild different textures of what light feels like moving through the body. Yeah. We shot most of this like practically on film, and I worked with a CGI artist to project these certain movements around a person and shoot that in real time.
Yeah.
It looks like it's actually happening. Just getting back to like the roots of like what filmmaking used to be, because I'm like, all right, if I can do that, now I can understand the concepts. I can apply that if I'm working on like this bigger thing with all these different computers and stuff. Because like I said, you got to be hands-on.
Right.
So yeah, that piece, that was very fun for me.
There's like, do you have like certain subject matter that you're like, I want to make this, I would love to make a boxing movie, I'd love to make a baseball movie, or like an epic love story, or like, you know, is there certain sort of subject matters within the sci-fi genre that you're like interested in?
Yeah, I think right now I'm really interested in like nature versus technology. I think we're moving into this time where there's like, some people are like, oh, we got to go way back to nature. And other people are like, oh no, that's never happening. We're going to become robots.
Yeah.
Like, so I think that's what's something that like really interests me. Cause as a kid, you know, I spent a lot of time in like Beaverton, Oregon, Portland. I was out like hiking, like touching grass, like breathing in the air, seeing the trees. I'm like, oh my God, this is nature. This is amazing. And then I moved to Texas as a young kid, where some kids are not as exposed to, you know, the majesticness of like what the world offers us. And yeah, I've just through different experiences and relationships and these things have played out in my life, I've seen how like technology is like kind of leading us in this way that's like very far from like our true selves. So that's what's kind of drawing me in right now.
What did you, not to deviate too much, but did you get into the AI stuff recently with Midjourney and DALL-E and all those things?
Yeah.
What's your thoughts on those? Too scary or?
It's just a tool. I think we really, like I was talking about the divergence of like nature and technology. I think we are overestimating our ability to innovate and create things with technology and underestimating like what is already there that we contain, you know? So I think if you're afraid of a tool like DALL-E, then you're not digging deep enough in understanding that your potential as like a human it's gotten a lot on this. How long has Apple existed? How many years?
Probably close to 20. No, it was like 90. I think they came out in 91 or 92. So
yeah,
20 something years.
20 something years.
Which is nothing.
Yeah, that's about my age.
Yeah.
And so that's like comparing my age to how long have human beings been around? Debatedly, at the least.
Possibly 100,000 years.
At the least. So we're comparing 100,000 years to 20 years.
Yeah.
100 years, even if you want to go back to like computers, period.
It's the exponentiality of technology that's very scary.
I think humans have exponentiality.
You think we're still like evolving? Like, well, that's kind of the question is like, is there going to be a place where like we won't be able to do basic things in a couple of years without sort of integrating with AI in some way? You know what I mean? Or, I mean, but we already are. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like do you go anywhere without your phone?
Those are good times. Yeah, I'm lucky enough to where I have just like the faintest memory of the world before technology.
Yeah.
You know,
exactly.
like my formative years were just like regular living. Yeah. And by the time these things came around, I had enough of a brain to like know, you know, what's real and what's not.
I think we're both in that because I was born in 91.
Yeah. That sounded like a diss towards young people.
No, I don't think it. I think
it's
a very special time that I think we grew up in. It's a transition moment between pre-internet, or not even pre-internet, but like I would say like accessibility. You know what I'm saying?
I think that's why I'm fascinated by that kind of duality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I mean, me and my brother used to like literally go and play in a ditch somewhere, and it was the best. I remember that. Like, my kids don't play in ditches. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, they're building like, Minecraft worlds.
Yeah. So what's the difference? Is there a difference? We're getting like out there right now, but I love it.
Is there a difference?
If you're building worlds in a computer or a simulation or whatever versus like throwing some sticks and like lighting some fireworks and like blowing up some army guys, like you're still using your imagination, right?
Yeah.
But what is the sort of long term or short term? Like,
there's nothing like the real thing.
Yeah.
You know, like, I think the more we indulge in like praising like the capabilities of technology and avoiding understanding like what we've been capable of in the past as humans, where we're at now, like our physical, like I said, I tried to heal using techniques that were practical.
Right.
I like to spend my time hitting things.
Yeah.
I like to
sure.
feel, and I like work that evokes that out of me, and I think that's what changes things the most. So that's why I always come back to like what's real versus like, you know, this technology. It is a tool for sure, but it's a tool that we can't solely rely on. I think that's the biggest point that I'm trying to make, is that if we get too caught up in like, oh, this AI thing can now just create the whole storyboard.
Right.
we're missing the magic from it. We're taking our own power away from the thing. So if instead maybe we think, oh, here's this thing that can help me make my ideas even bigger or better, or execute a certain thing more efficiently, then sure.
Right.
But yeah, we got to control it. We can't let it control us.
Yeah. Scary stuff, dude.
Can't even imagine. Like, I can't even imagine like coming up right now, all the distractions and things that are kind of going to get in your way that you feel like are not.
Dude, that's an interesting point, because I mean, we came up with like the innovation of the 5D. Like, that was like our big thing, where like I can have access to the thing that shoots fairly high quality with like shallow depth of field. Like that was, but what is that thing now? There's just, everything's available. I can't even imagine being 14, 15 years old and wanting to be a filmmaker, and like, or is it the idea that there's too much choice that you just don't even choose anything? You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
I think there's still choices. I think people have more choices now of like the kind of filmmaker that they want to be. There's these different outlets, and it's not just like the kind of filmmaker that they want to be, but it's like, what kind of person do I want to be, and like, what's my voice here in the world? So I like that.
Yeah.
Because that allows people to express themselves more wholly, and if they feel like they're able to, be maybe more true to themselves, they can be happier. And I think generally, if people are happier, they're able to move with love. Yeah. Like, that's the point of this whole thing here.
I love that, dude. I love how hopeful you are. I appreciate it. Like, seriously, I'm not joshing.
I think it's ironic because you look at my work and you're like,
that's a little dark, dude. No, I don't think so. Well, dude, this has been great. Thank you for sitting with us. From the Sundance Grand Jury winning short, Thunder Road, we chat with writer, director, and actor Jim Cummings.
With the Thunder Road feature, it's a suicide letter. It was supposed to be this thing that was going to kill me. And I wanted to have it out in the world before I died. And now I don't know what I'm still doing here.